Hello everyone, I'm Hafiz.
And I'm Parkson.
We are the fathers behind the podcast
We Are Dads Too.
We discuss everything from being an effective father to a good co-parent to our spouse.
We also have guests and experts on our show to talk about the different aspects of fatherhood. Come and join us to discover more about our experiences as fathers because
We are Dads Too. Click on the link below to follow us on Spotify.
Hey Hafiz, we're back together again and it's February already.
Yes, Paksan, it's so fast. We started this podcast in January 2021 and now we're into the second month.
That's
been
right.
short but in a way very enriching journey.
Yes. I've been having fun and I hope our listeners also have been enjoying listening to us chatting as if we were at a coffee shop.
Yes, that's how we started and we would like to continue doing that.
Yeah. You
So-
know, what's happening in the month of February every year?
What? My birthday, I think.
Really?
Yes, you don't know.
No. My birthday is coming up. It's always coming up.
All right. Mine is coming out earlier, I think. Very soon. Later, we will see how we can plan a celebration.
yes. And I hope we do get gifts from our listeners.
Okay.
No, but seriously, February is the month where Valentine's Day is celebrated.
Oh, yes.
And that's why we are going to be touching on the topic of marriage for the month of February. And who knows, we might even extend into the month of March because marriage is such a big topic and important one. I think many couples do not realize that the key to good parenting is actually a strong marriage.
Yes, that's true. In part of our podcast, one of the main theme that we are touching on is a parent's relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Where
right.
we would like to discuss what are the ways in which we as parents can have a relationship that is lasting, enriching, and not only that, but give a good example to our children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right. That's part of the identity. Fathers when they treat their wives well and do what they can to strengthen the marriage and keep the whole family intact, they are actually showing and modeling to their sons and daughters what they should do in terms of also having a healthy family in the future. All right. But sadly, every year in Singapore, more than 7,000 couples end in divorce or annulment. Many marriages end in divorce and annulments in Singapore. Every year, 7,000 plus. And also, fewer couples get married.
Yeah, and the statistics have been showing that things are not getting better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking about the numbers are rising, people are marrying later. Probably they see bad examples of marriage out there and they are afraid to commit to any marriage relationship. That's sad.
That's one possible reason. I think yeah, when people look at the traditional marriage and say, hey, it's not working. And that's why possibly they're exploring alternatives, other options, or delaying marriage. But I also have a point of view, and that is couples today have higher expectations of their marriages. They want more out of their marriage. In the past, our parents or even grandparents, back in the days, long time ago, marriages, people get married for survival.
Yeah, it is
See?
basically economic
That's right.
and sometimes status also.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But today, that's no longer the most important reason to get married. And so there are new reasons to get married. And a lot of them marry to, they feel that, my partner can now fulfill me and support me. And, and that's why the people refer to their partners as the better half, or my half and things like that. So that tells us that that's a mindset. They see marriage as a way of fulfilling themselves and meeting many of their needs. But that's also a problem because we are all humans. Not a single one of us will be able to meet the needs completely of our partners.
Yeah, Parkson, I always feel that before marriage, many people get attracted because they have opposite character.
Mm-hmm.
They make each other feel full, as you say, complete, because personality-wise, they are different. They find the other person very interesting because they don't have such a personality.
That's right.
So you're talking about opposite attracts. But after marriage, somehow, these opposites become something that, you cannot stand. Why are you suddenly become so different from the person that I thought I married? So what happened actually?
It's different when you're dating. When you're dating, you do notice some of the so-called character flaws, personality flaws, and habits that maybe a little bit annoy you. But you see, at the end of the day, you send your girlfriend or boyfriend, a boyfriend sends their girlfriends home, and then the boyfriends go home to their own homes. So there is a relief in that sense, okay? And then maybe the next day you meet up again, and but when you're married, you're living together, you face each other 24/7. Well, you do have to go to work, and especially at night when the makeup comes off.
Yeah.
The mask comes off, and you see
true self.
Yes, the true self. And over time it really wears you down. The annoying behaviors and habits wears you down, and you begin to the little things begin to annoy you. How your partner squeezes the tube of toothpaste, whether they leave the toilet seat up or down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are couples whose marriage are going very well. You're not
Mhm,
talking about
mhm.
everyone has this problem. However, we need to know what are the factors that cause marriage to be unstable, to go into the rocks. Marriage are like that. There are ups and downs.
Yep.
But as you mentioned earlier, there are marriages who just fall apart and become, you call it apocalyptic. The end of the world. And that's why we are today. I think I'm very interested to really. I did a research, but I'm facing someone who is, I believe, has an expertise in this particular area. Why marriage breaks up. And Parkson, you are a qualified 7 principal program leader from the Gottman Institute. Maybe you can share what does marriage breakers that we should be aware of, and maybe you can give a bit of background on Gottman himself and how he managed to come up with what I read. He has this research base and predictive behaviors that he can identify in marriages that will break up. Is almost 100% proven to be able to predict using certain criteria. So maybe you can share.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so the expertise is not me. I'm not exactly the expert. I always refer most of the time to Dr. John Gottman. He is the founder of the Gottman Institute in America. Now, he and his team of researchers have spent about 40 years studying more than 3,000 couples over time. Okay? And basically, they invite these couples to a place in the University of Washington, to a particular room they call it the Love Lab. So in this Love Lab, basically there are two chairs, all right, where the couples will sit down and have conversations and things like that. At the same time, they are being strapped with all kinds of measuring instruments, like measuring heart rate, breathing, even skin conductance. And then at a certain point in that conversation, they'll be asked to have a conflict discussion. And, at the end of that conflict discussion, they will be asked to take a urine test.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Okay.
So it really looks like a laboratory where they are testing,
Yes,
not
yes.
rats, but humans.
Correct. Now, the reason is they not only want to understand, the conversations, the dialogue and all that, they even want to know how the body reacts to different stresses and different tensions, and, especially in a conflict, how does that affect the body? So this is a very, very scientific study, all right? And after 6 years, all right, the couples will either come back or they will be sent certain questionnaires to monitor their progress in their marriage. And over the course of 40 years, some couples end in divorce and some couples remain married. So when the time that in the Love Lab, they're also being videotaped, and there's a team of expert observers who will observe their facial expressions. All right, and then they will keep monitoring it and recording it as the discussion goes on. They will record the different facial expressions. And so they have all these videotapes, the library of videotapes that are kept for each couple. Now, so when certain marriages end in divorce, Dr. John Gottman and his team will kind of take back, kind of retrieve the videotapes and begin to ask the question, so what did these couples do and did not do such that they ended in divorce? And what did the couples that are still married do and did not do such that they are still married? So based on all this, Dr. John Gottman was able to uncover, I say uncover, not develop, but uncover the 7 principles for making marriage work.
This is very interesting. I mean, it is called a longitudinal study.
That's right.
Where there's a long-term, real experience of people going through naturally, and end up with certain conclusions or certain condition, which later they try to match the data, all right, that's available. And it's very interesting because it's like you having all your history uncovered, and I thought it's like a reverse engineering, getting all this data and trying to read and match into what's happening today. So there are some factors, therefore, has been identified as the so-called predictors of marriage breakups.
That's right.
And there are 4 of them, right? So let us discuss what they are and see, I think more importantly, how we as husbands can learn, all right, and find ways how to overcome these predictors such that we can change our habits if we are also having these predictors. Yeah.
Yes. There are actually 6. Besides the 7 principles for making marriage work, Dr. John Gottman has uncovered 6 predictors of divorce. Now, today we're going to just talk about one of them, but this one predictor of divorce has 4 parts. All right?
Okay.
So it's called the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Now, some of you may find that term familiar. It does come from the Bible in the book of Revelations. It's about the end time. So it's end of, so he uses this term to describe that when any couple displays any of these 4 behaviors, then it is a sign that their marriage is heading towards a breakup and a divorce. Okay? Now, Dr. John Gottman has the record, has a reputation of being able to predict whether a couple would remain married in the next 5 years by just watching them have a dialogue, have a conversation for 15 minutes.
Wow. That's really frightening.
That's frightening, so I'm sure you don't want to be invited to dinner.
But in a way, I think if you're really true to yourself and you want to avoid what is upcoming, why not?
Yes. But once you know what we're going to share today, I think this will really help you to, evaluate yourself to see if any of these behaviors are present in your own marriage. So the first one is criticism. Now, what do you think, Hafiz, is criticism? What's your understanding of it?
Looking at the negatives of people, looking at whatever they do is always wrong. And finding fault.
That's right.
For example, I think many times you always make this statement, especially in marriage. You are always putting the clothes, at the wrong place, wrong color, you are always this, always that. You never do things right. This kind of extreme way of describing, which is usually not true.
Yep. So criticism sounds like that. It usually begins with you and you always, you never, So in short, criticism is a verbal attack on somebody's personality or character. All right? So because that's the definition of criticism, there is actually no such thing as constructive criticism.
Okay.
There is, you can give positive and constructive feedback, okay? But criticism is negative. So you can't make it positive, okay? Now, so that's criticism. So whenever you begin your sentence with you, all right, it's already perceived, easily perceived by the other person as an attack, For example, a husband may say to the wife, look, we're late again, it's because you're always so slow in getting ready, and we have to wait forever for you to get ready. So that is a criticism.
Is this a real experience, person?
No. My wife is pretty quick, actually.
Trying to be political correct here.
Yeah, she doesn't. She does put on makeup, but it's not like she takes 3 hours to do that. You see, And she is also a person who is, very particular about being on time. And when we talk about being punctual, means you at least 15 minutes early.
Right. I think we always see the other party, as you said, criticize their weakness. We forget actually we also do have weakness. But when somebody point out our weakness, criticize, we become defensive, and we
That's
say
right.
that, and it becomes even an argument later because and then tit for tat,
That's right.
You also late. You're also always late. You are also always not putting, the clothes in the right bucket.
That's right. But before we go into the second one, which is defensiveness,
Uh-huh.
and you're talking about it right now, it's also important to understand why people criticize. People say, "Well, I criticize because I'm critical in thinking." And critical thinking is something that is admired. All right, there are courses on it. We need to develop critical thinking. But criticism is not about critical thinking. It's about blaming. Look, we're late again, so you need to blame something, either the traffic, the weather, or someone, your wife. All right. If not, then people will blame the government, and some will blame God.
Yeah.
Okay. It's human nature to want to blame something or someone when something happens. You see? And so that's where criticism mostly comes from. Okay. Now that we understand what causes us to criticize, then this is where we can change. So instead of blaming, just state a complaint, just express a complaint in the form of a wish. So what's the antidote for criticism? Well, Dr. John Gottman recommends that instead of blaming, you are so slow, you are so, well, just state a complaint, and instead of starting with you, start the sentence with I. So the template is this: say, I feel, and state an emotion. I feel hurt, I feel upset, I feel embarrassed when something happens, whether it's your partner who does something or something happens, and then say, I wish. All right. So you turn it into a wish rather than a demand, and instead of blaming, you just state a complaint. And that will actually kind of soften the start of this conversation. Because when you start it harshly, by attacking, then rightly, like you said, you are merely inviting an attack back.
Yeah, the other way I thought is what we call a strawman approach. I mean, this is where you use a third party or even your personal experience. I mean, for example, you are never not guilty of being late, right? So, for example, at work, you may be late, and then you describe how your boss, or your colleague had to wait, and then we don't get things done. We don't achieve our objective of that particular meeting. Instead of using your wife or your partner, all right, you're using another person's example, all right, but you don't mention any names, but that will make them feel less personal. It's not personal attack on me. So that's probably another way. I'm sure there are other ways, but it is these other ways we should explore, other than, as you said, using the word you, accusatory, right? And then the second problem kicks in, which is defensiveness. We will talk about it later.
Yep. So when you criticize someone, and because criticism is a verbal attack, then very naturally the other person will want to defend themselves. Okay? And for example, if you say to your partner, no, you are so slow or you're so untidy, the defensiveness can sound like, well, I'm not the only one. All right? And then they'll either that or they'll pick on something else and say, what about you? All right. So it's a tit for tat, like you say, and it never ends. See? So that's something that we definitely do not want. It's a domino effect, it's a downward spiral, and it leads to nowhere except, bitterness, and hurt. So the antidote to defensiveness is simply to take responsibility. Now, we're not asking anyone to take full responsibility, but take the part of your responsibility. For example, if, the husband says to the wife, we're late again because you're so slow. Then the wife, instead of saying, whatever reasons and excuses, just take part of the responsibility and say, well, maybe you're right. Perhaps the next time I will start preparing, 10 minutes, 15 minutes earlier so that, I will give myself more time to prepare and we will be able to be on time the next time. So, take whatever part of your responsibility that you can think of, all right, instead of just purely pushing it aside and, sweeping it away and saying, it's not my fault at all.
The other thing, Paksan, when you talk about being attacked, it reminds me of our discussion topic on teamwork. All right, you're talking about we should be a volleyball team, all right? A beach volleyball team. All right. It seems that this is something that we men usually we like soccer. We shouldn't be a soccer team, attacking, defending each other. Having a very high adrenaline rush because we are being attacked and we need to defend ourselves. But I think one of the important way to deal directly when we are being attacked is to do this technique, which is called a 6-second rule, in which when we feel that we are being attacked or we are being something frightening that comes to us, we wait for 6 seconds, because that is when the chemical in the brain, in the amygdala, is triggered to a defensive mechanism that such that your brain, all the blood, all the oxygen goes there, and the rational part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, does not able to rationalize things, and you become very much irrational in your behavior. All right. So that 6-second rule, I thought something that you need to practice. Is not easy, but practice it not only when you have a conflict, even when you are walking, suddenly you feel that somebody is trying to pounce on you, or something is trying to, like I said, dog coming and quickly running, and you have this shock. Just wait for a while, wait for 6 seconds for everything to go down, and then respond accordingly. Otherwise, that particular action within the 6 seconds will be very, as I said, being very defensive. In fact, sometimes it can be violent, because all the adrenaline, all the chemicals that make us want to defend ourselves is being triggered.
That's right. But you know what? If there's a dog running after me, I will not wait 6 seconds.
Depends what dog. All right, if it's a big dog, it's okay. I think small dog, no problem, right?
Oh, some small dogs are also, they bite, and their bites are quite painful, So I wouldn't want to wait 6 seconds. I think that's a instinctive thing that is hardwired into our brains. It's called the reflex action, either fight or flight kind of thing. Yes, so that is for our safety, we are created with those kind of reflexes to keep us safe and, to allow us to survive for longer periods. But when it comes to the relationship, that same reflex can cause problems. Exactly like what you say, For example, if criticism begins to happen, and then defensiveness, and then which begets more criticism, and then there's a back and forth, temperatures rise, decibels increase, our heart rates will go up, our breathing becomes stronger, and harder. And there's a term for it actually, it's called flooding. So beginning somewhere there, when your heart rate is beginning to rise from rest at 65 beats per minute to 70 to 75 to 80, two chemicals are being released into your bloodstream. The two chemicals are adrenaline and cortisol. And it begins to flood your brains also, especially like you mentioned, the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is a very important part of the brain because it's responsible for rational thinking, decision-making, problem-solving, and emotional self-regulation. Now, when your heart rate goes even higher and up to about 95 beats per minute, that's kind of the threshold where you are flooded. And when you're flooded means your prefrontal cortex is flooded. Like driving your car into a river, everything shuts down. So your prefrontal cortex basically shuts down, and it's no longer in control of your words and action. from that point on, everything you say and do is purely based on emotions, either anger or fear. All right. And if you've heard of road rage, this is exactly what happens. Domestic violence, this is exactly what happens because the couples are not self-aware enough to be aware that their heart rates are rising and they're reaching this point called flooding, and they allow themselves to go past that line and they begin to act out purely of emotions.
Yeah. I mean, angry people don't make good decisions.
Mm-hmm.
We know all of us when we're angry, we make bad decisions that sometimes we regret. And I think in a marriage, sometimes we can forgive, but certain things cannot be forgotten.
That's right. That's right. It's sometimes it's good not to forget so that you remember the lessons, but to forgive, that means the emotions are not tied to those memories anymore. You can talk about those memories, but as if just in a matter of fact manner. You don't feel the emotions, you don't feel the hurt and the bitterness and the anger anymore. Okay, you just talk about it as if it's happened, but it was in the past, that kind of thing. So that shows that we have recovered, we have healed from that. There's no lingering hard feelings and bitterness about it.
Yeah, talking about this habit that we may have. It's easy to talk, but when we are in the situation, all right, we have that behavior with us for so long. Not only we have that behavior, but people see us having the behavior, and they have this sometimes thinking that you're not going to change, all right, and that perception doesn't help. Okay, however, regardless of what other people perceive we are, what you believe is what will happen. So I think what is important is, if you want to change, if I want to change, I need to be focused on myself, understand, be self-aware of what are the things I need to change, and then do it such that I will have a very clear goal. For example, if just now we're talking about the 6-second rule, right? If it's a technique that you want to practice, don't be disheartened if the first time you try, you don't succeed. It is okay. It's okay to tell yourself that I'm forgiving myself for not changing now. I will, if I repeatedly and routinely do the same thing. Because in changing of habit, there's this rule called the habit loop, in which you get a trigger and you respond with a routine, and then you must have a reward. So these three, if you don't have it, you're not able to repeat. You're not able to get your habit changed. And especially when you don't have the reward, you don't frame the reward, you will not be able to repeat the cycle. So for example, if the 6-second rule again, as an example that was given, if the first time, second time, you are not successful because you have not identified. If you want to, what is the thing that trigger you? It can be someone making you angry, right? All right, or anyone making you angry. That's a trigger. So second, ask yourself, what is the response? And that has to be done, as I said, within the 6 seconds. You identify the response. For example, you just be quiet. All right, breathe in deeply. All right, as you breathe in, ask yourself, at the end of this exercise or this test, I'll get a reward. And what is that reward? It's maybe that my wife or my partner realize that I am not that person that you think I am. All right? And that is my reward, because someone has a very now positive perspective of myself. And if that is the reward, I become very happy, satisfied, and I will do it again. So we have to identify these 3 factors in the habit loop. Otherwise, the loop again becomes that loop of non-changing or the same behavior that we've been doing over and over again. Because bad behavior also, or bad habit, also use the same loop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
so this is something maybe we can all try.
Yep. Because habits are all basically neurons in our brains being connected. The more you repeat a certain action, the stronger that connection becomes, and then becomes more automatic. So by changing your routines, as you use the term, you are actually forming a new connection, and then the old connections become weaker as the new ones become stronger. And that's how basically habits are being formed and changed. Yeah. So let's move on because time is really catching up on us. So that's
Paksan, I thought,
Mhm.
why not? Because of time,
Mhm.
we just finish off this second predictor, and we'll continue in the next episode. All right, for the next two predictors, because I think there are a lot to talk about for the next two, because it's really something that I thought these next two are the last straws, right, in a marriage. Because those criticism and defensive, these are quite, to me, very much compared to the other two. All right, so I want to give a good time for all of us to discuss and listen. In the meantime, maybe we summarize what are these two that we have discussed, all right, and what are the steps that we can take to change and to adjust our behavior such that we are able to overcome and not let these predictors haunt us, as what you mentioned just now. Within 15 minutes, Dr. John Gottman can tell you, that is very frightening. Yeah, it doesn't take him to tell us, but if we know what are the factors and we are not aware, then it is something that will happen, and we do not know how to overcome.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we don't want to rush it. So let's summarize. Let's recap a little. We talked about criticism, and criticism is a verbal attack on someone's character or personality. And it usually begins, the sentence begins with you, and it states, a certain characteristic or personality, so-called flaw. And when a person is criticized, they perceive it as an attack. And when a person is under the threat of an attack, of course, naturally, what they would do is defend themselves. They will give excuses, or the best form of defense, as they say, is an attack. So they will attack back, and probably using the same method, criticism. So it becomes a never-ending cycle of, back and forth. And so we also talked about some antidotes. For example, instead of criticizing, we just basically blame. We are trying to assign blame to something or someone. Well, instead of blaming, just complain, turn it into a complaint by just sharing how a certain happening, a certain incident, a certain action by your partner, or certain way of speaking by your partner makes you feel. You see, the important thing about this is this, no one can no one can argue against your feeling. If you say that, I feel upset, no one can say, no, you should not feel upset.
And the other way around, if I say I feel happy, nobody can convince you that you are not.
Correct.
Yeah.
You see, our emotions are a very integral part of us. If you do not accept my emotions, how I feel, you're not accepting me. All right. So no one can dispute. I think you don't. I don't think you're angry. It says, what makes you think I'm not angry? I'm telling you, I am angry.
Yeah, sometimes people want to just look at the good things, right? I mean, and bottle it up. Emotions are there for a reason. It needs to be let go, but in a measured way. I think for men, this is where I think one of the reasons why we have this podcast is because we men need to learn from the women. All right, in terms of how we express ourselves. I mean, man has the capability to control the emotions, and it is useful in many ways. However, if you don't let out, as I say, in a measured, controlled, and reasonable way, you will not be able to let people know how you feel, and they're not able to, don't say help, understand. And many men tend not to want to do that because of this idea that I'm strong, I'm the bedrock. I mean, I'm a man. I cannot be seen as soft. And is that what it should be? And we now realize that actually from this discussion, we need, to come out and have our, as what you said, recognize our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of when out of control, then it becomes something that will lead to something negative.
That's right.
Yeah, emotions like sadness, like unhappiness, these are not negative. These are just what we respond to the environment.
That's right. These
Yeah.
are very natural. It should not be dismissed. It should not be disapproved of, but it should be understood, empathized, and I would not say the man that man needs to let out their emotions, but rather learn to express them. You know, some men let out the expressions by playing golf or tennis, or taking out their stress and the anger on something else. But learn to express it there and then. You don't keep accumulating it until you wait for something to be able to let off the steam. That might not be healthy, because you never know when you're reaching the tipping point and then you just explode. All right, it may be in front of your wife, or it may be in front of your children. So that's very harmful.
Paksan, men have very creative coping mechanisms.
And the most common one is just swallowing it, just suppressing all the emotions, and drowning themselves with, for example, work. And I used to do that. I was a workaholic for many years because I was struggling with feelings that comes from my childhood. And so that's not a healthy way either, because that affects our mental health, our health, and all kinds of, all our relationships. So we need to learn how to identify and express our emotions in a very, very rational and calm manner.
That's great. As we said just now, we have another 2 predictors that we'll discuss. Do listen in the next episode, where we continue this discussion on marriage breakers, where Paksan and I will share not only what Dr. John Gottman has found to be predictive of what can break marriages, but probably next time, Paksan, share our personal stories.
Sure.
That'll be interesting, because
Yes.
as married people ourselves, as I said, there's always up and downs. And if we assume all marriages are, always plain sailing, and we are wrong. Right? So out there, do follow us again, our next episode. So for now, come back again and see you again.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.